Welcome back to the deep dive. We spend so much time talking about relationships in terms of, well, chemistry or compatibility, these sort of vague
Right.
ideas.
These almost magical concepts.
Exactly. But what if the true measure of a connection, the health of it, could be defined almost mathematically?
Like an equation.
Yeah, like an equation. Today, we are strapping in for an exploration of something that is, I think, deeply universal, yet just maddeningly complex. We're talking about the fundamental drivers of emotional connection.
It's the engine room of relationships, truly. It's what makes them not just tick, but soar, or conversely, what causes that engine to just seize up entirely and, destroy the vehicle.
That's a great way to put it. And our source material today provides a really remarkable framework for this. It centers on a fascinating interlocking pair of concepts.
I love this part.
Me too. The first is the need for love, which the sources call ECHEAUC. And its
Mhm.
critical counterpart is the fulfillment or satiety of love, or meet the
Sure.
fullness. Precisely. And these ideas don't just describe a relationship. They frame relational health in almost physical, measurable terms.
Yeah.
It's almost like thinking about volume and pressure in a system.
That's the brilliance of this framework, I think. It moves so far beyond just general feelings of, are we happy?
Right.
And it tries to define the specific mechanical relationships, the dynamics between wanting love, which is the demand, and actually receiving enough of it to feel genuinely satisfied. That's the supply.
So our mission for this deep dive is to explore those precise mechanics. We want to look at what the source calls the direct or proportional relationships versus the inverse or negative relationships between these two core variables
How they play out.
and how they play out. How does the interaction between needing love and receiving it dictate whether a connection achieves, true emotional balance or, and this is the really disturbing part, descends into patterns of genuine cruelty?
Yeah, and the sources provide a very clear, almost clinical diagnosis here. They establish that the dynamic between needing and receiving love isn't just a spectrum of a little good or a little bad.
It's not just a dimmer switch.
No, not at all. It is a powerful indicator that defines the nature of the relational environment itself. This connection is the ultimate barometer of relational health, and it has a binary outcome.
Binary. So it's one or the other.
Essentially, it is either synchronized and positive, which leads to stability, or it's wildly asynchronous and negative, which leads to destruction. The sources suggest there is very little sustainable middle ground.
Okay, let's unpack this then. How did the relationship between needing love and receiving love become so precisely defined as either balanced or destructive? And I guess the bigger question is, why does the imbalance inevitably seem to lead to cruelty?
That's where we start our dissection. The sources draw a really sharp line between two fundamental ways these variables can interact. And those interactions, they determine whether you achieve what they call emotional balance, a state of thriving, or something much, much worse, a state where harm is actively inflicted.
All right, so to begin, we need to clearly anchor these two foundational variables. First, as you said, we have the need for love.
I see.
Right. And this is the intrinsic desire, the emotional requirement, that open space within you that demands affection and validation and connection from your partner.
Think of it as the demand side of your emotional market. It's not static.
No, absolutely not. It fluctuates based on stress, personal history, external circumstances.
Hmm.
A bad day at work can spike your need for love.
Absolutely. And then on the other side of the equation, we have the fulfillment of love.
The supply side.
Exactly. This is the state of being satisfied, nourished, or satiated by the love and the attention and the effort you get from the other person.
It's that feeling of having the emotional need met completely.
Mhm.
You feel full.
You feel full. And the sources are very clear that all emotional connection, what they call lusiage, stems directly from the interplay between these two powerful forces. They really are like two tectonic plates shifting against each other.
Okay, so you have these two plates. The ideal state then, the operational goal of any healthy relationship is what the sources label the direct or proportional relationship.
Right. And this dynamic, when it's working, leads directly to what they call emotional balance.
Taoism. So what does that look like? What does proportionality look like in practice day to day?
It's all about synchronization. In this direct relationship, the variables move together. They're in lockstep.
So if one goes up, the other goes up.
If one goes up, the other goes up. If one goes down, the other follows. And the mechanism of increase is really the key to understanding why it's so healthy. When the need for love and the fulfillment of love increase together simultaneously, think about it. If one person's need goes up, say, They feel uniquely insecure after a career setback. Or they just need connection after a really hard week.
Yeah, they're feeling vulnerable.
Exactly. In this dynamic, the partner actively, successfully, and this is critical, willingly satisfies that need.
So it's not just a partner sort of grudgingly stepping up. It's a shared emotional metabolism that handles stress together.
That's a perfect description, a shared metabolism.
If I'm hungrier for connection today, my partner steps up to feed that hunger. And the relationship, crucially, feels better because of that interaction. It doesn't feel burdened by it.
Right. It's the definition of a virtuous cycle. The partner who gives the fulfillment isn't doing it out of obligation or resentment. They do it because their own sense of connection and fulfillment is boosted by the successful act of meeting the other's need.
They feel effective.
They feel effective and seen and loved for their effort. It reinforces the whole system.
Okay, that covers the increase. But you said they also decrease together. So what about the mechanism of decrease?
That's where the concept of, let's call it effort management, comes in. When the need for love and the fulfillment of love decrease together.
Like when things are just calm.
Exactly. Maybe both partners are focusing intensely on external projects, or they're just enjoying a period of quiet, deep mutual confidence. There's no distress in that state.
Because the expectation isn't there.
The expectation isn't there. The emotional market slows down harmoniously. There's no expectation of high-volume affection because the internal demand has temporarily dropped for both of them.
So the overall state remains balanced because the demand and the supply are always matched, even if the absolute volume is low at that moment.
It's the constant synchronization that defines the balance, the Tawazun.
This makes perfect sense on paper. Match supply to demand, basic economics. But here is the truly fascinating and I think counterintuitive detail from the sources that elevates this from just mere synchronization to a dynamic active state of balance.
Oh yeah, this is my favorite part.
The direct relationship actually thrives on shared longing. The source terms it Shou-yi.
This is perhaps the most profound psychological insight of the entire framework. It completely counters the popular idea that static contentment or perpetual saturation is the peak of love.
That being completely full all the time is the goal.
Right. Stagnation is actually a risk factor. The sources state that when one party experiences a necessary need for love, a brief, acceptable absence or deficit love between the parties actually increases through the act of longing.
Okay, wait, I have to stop you there. Because for most people, I think, expressing need feels like weakness. It doesn't feel like a foundation for balance. It feels like a risk.
A huge risk.
So how do the sources address that massive cultural and personal barrier we have against admitting, I need you, without this deep fear of dependency or, being vulnerable?
That's where the power of the established direct relationship comes in. The only reason need can turn into positive longing is because the relationship has already built up a bedrock of trust and reliable fulfillment.
So you have to trust the system first.
You have to trust the system. If you express a small, temporary need, and it is met successfully and lovingly, that interaction serves as a confirmation of commitment.
Yeah.
It reinforces the trust.
I see.
So the longing, the hokei, is therefore not pain that's born of a fear of abandonment. It's anticipation born of the certainty of return.
Ah, that's a huge distinction. So the need itself, if it's handled correctly within this synchronized system, it doesn't cause pain or resentment. It actually becomes an accelerant.
It intensifies the love.
It intensifies it because it proves the system works every single time.
Exactly. Think of it like a highly calibrated emotional gyroscope. A truly stable system doesn't mean no movement. It means that any movement or temporary tilt, that's the need, is instantly met with a corrective force. That's the fulfillment, which brings the system back to center, often with more energy than it had before.
So the anticipation of connection, that feeling of longing, it's not a flaw in the system.
Not at all. It's the force that prevents complacency. It keeps you both engaged.
It sounds like a dance of approach and separation, but it's done with intention and security.
That's a beautiful way of putting it.
You step away just enough, emotionally or physically, like a short trip, to feel that slight tug of need, and then you rush back together for the fulfillment, and in doing so, you deepen the emotional commitment and reinforce the trust each time.
And that feeling of anticipation, that longing, is the emotional equivalent of rotational momentum. It's what keeps the gyroscope spinning smoothly.
So it's a continuous positive feedback loop.
It is. The direct relationship implies profound trust. Trust that your need will be recognized, trust that it will be met, and trust that the fulfillment will be appreciated. When that synchronization exists, you get tawazun, emotional balance. The longing just adds flavor. It keeps the connection active and desired rather than passive and assumed.
Let's ground this for our listener. If a couple is constantly together, constantly performing this high-level affection, but they never allow for that space, they never allow for the natural cycle of rising and falling need, are they actually risking their balance?
Absolutely. The sources imply that constant forced saturation can actually stifle the possibility of longing. If you are always full, you never feel that delightful confirmation of being fed again.
You take it for granted.
You take it for granted. And that lack of longing can subtly bleed into the second negative scenario, which we'll get to shortly, the state of low need and forced fulfillment. The beauty of the direct relationship is its fluidity. It honors the fact that life happens, needs ebb and flow, and the relationship has to be flexible enough to handle those fluctuations in unison. The goal isn't a high absolute volume of affection all the time.
It's the matching.
It is the perfect, responsive matching of the demand with the supply.
Yeah, and this is why this framework is so powerful. It gives you a tool to diagnose the mechanism of the relationship, not just the subjective feeling of it.
Exactly.
If you have a partner who is giving, say, 100 units of love, but you only need 10 units right now because you're hyper-focused on your career.
That 90-unit excess is actually inefficiency. It could even feel like pressure.
Right. Potential discomfort. But on the flip side, if you need 100 units and they're only providing 10, well, that's just disastrous.
Emotional balance means the curves are perfectly aligned. When your need surges, the fulfillment surges. When your need recedes, the expectation for fulfillment recedes with it. It's that fluidity that prevents the system from breaking down.
And it transforms the vulnerability of expressing need into a source of relational strength.
Powered by mutual longing and reliable satisfaction. That right there is the definition of emotional health, according to these sources.
Okay, so that state of synchronization sets the perfect positive benchmark. Now, we shift to the opposite pole, the inverse relationship.
Here's where things get messy.
Yeah, this is where the variables move in opposition to each other, and the results, according to our sources, are profoundly negative. This is where it gets into the territory of, well, emotional pathology, where disconnection actively creates harm.
The sources define two very distinct inverse scenarios, and the first one is, it's perhaps the most painful and, I think, commonly experienced in dysfunctional relationships.
Okay.
This is what we'll call the love-starvation dynamic. It's the state of increased need for love combined with a lack of fulfillment.
So the need is high, maybe desperately high, but the satisfaction is critically low.
The variables are pulling against each other violently like a rope that's about to snap.
So if the need is a deep hunger, the fulfillment is non-existent. Or maybe it's just tiny, unsatisfying crumbs scattered occasionally.
And those crumbs only remind the person how empty they are. They almost make it worse.
And the primary result of this immense imbalance is, it's truly startling. The sources call it the inability to see the love of the other party, regardless of how much effort that partner might be expending.
We can call this clinical result love blindness.
Love blindness, that is a chilling concept. Let's really dig into that mechanism. Why? Why is it that a person who is starved of love literally cannot register the affection that might actually be present, even if their partner is honestly trying their best?
It comes down to the psychological impact of chronic scarcity. When a deep emotional need is consistently and chronically unmet, your entire psychological system enters a state of perpetual deficiency.
A state of emergency.
A state of emergency and high alert. It's like being perpetually thirsty in a desert. After a while, all you can think about is water. The thirst becomes your entire reality.
So the overwhelming unmet need creates a subjective reality that's rooted entirely in what is missing.
Exactly. The need becomes so loud, so pervasive, it's like a constant shrieking siren in your head, that it acts like emotional white noise. It just filters out any incoming, subtle signals of affection.
So a partner might leave a sweet note, or plan a surprise weekend, or offer a hug.
But the person in the love blindness dynamic doesn't register it as love.
What do they register it as?
As a momentary, inadequate distraction from the deep structural deficit they feel. The note doesn't fill the hole. The hug doesn't quench the desert-level thirst.
And worse still, I imagine they often interpret that loving action through the lens of inadequacy, or even as proof of failure.
Yes. The thought process is, if they truly loved me, they wouldn't just send a text. They would have fixed the underlying problem that's making me feel this way.
So the high unmet need creates a kind of black hole of expectation.
A black hole is the perfect metaphor. The partner's actions, no matter how loving, get sucked in and are interpreted as catastrophically insufficient because they haven't filled that bottomless pit of structural need. It's a mechanism of emotional preservation that, tragically, self-sabotages the entire relationship.
And the sources state that this state of chronic dissatisfaction and love blindness leads directly to a very specific behavioral outcome.
It does. It leads to harshness or emis in dealing with the partner, and it comes from the side that is unfulfilled.
The word kwaswa, you said it's important. It's not just irritation.
No, the translation is closer to cruelty or hardness. It's a deliberate, sharp-edged behavior, not just generalized grumpiness. And that emotional jump from being unfulfilled to becoming cruel is tragically logical once you understand the internal pain.
It's reactive.
It's a reactive defense. The individual is in deep, chronic pain because of their perceived starvation. And that pain, combined with the cognitive inability to acknowledge or accept incoming love signals, gets externalized. It comes out as anger, criticism, relentless testing, or just plain hostility.
Let's consider the real-world behaviors tied to this scarcity-born cruelty. What does this look like day to day for a couple stuck in this?
It often looks like constantly moving the goalposts.
Okay.
The person who feels starved often becomes hypercritical, not about specific actions, but about the partner's underlying intent or character.
So it's not you forgot to take out the trash. It's you forgot to take out the trash because you don't care about me or this house.
Precisely. They might say, you claim you love me, but you never think to do X, Y, or Z. But here's the trap. Even when the partner achieves X, the focus immediately shifts to the perceived failure of not achieving Y and Z perfectly.
They're demanding proof of love, but their blindness means that no proof is ever admissible in court.
You're exactly right. They are paradoxically actively pushing away the very love they so desperately need, and they're using cruelty as this high, thick defensive armor against the vulnerability of their unmet need.
It sounds incredibly difficult to navigate.
Mm.
If the needy partner is suffering from love blindness, then logically, any effort the other partner makes is just doomed to fail. It's just going to bounce off that armor.
It feels that way. The source material focuses mainly on the diagnosis, on recognizing that this behavior is not intentional malice, but a distortion born of profound need. For the partner on the receiving end of this, they have to recognize that their current efforts are being cognitively filtered out.
So more gifts, more compliments. That's not going to work.
It's like pouring water into a bucket with a hole in it. The key is often external intervention or a radical shift in communication. You have to acknowledge the internal pain of the needy partner first, rather than just defending your own failed efforts.
That harshness, then, is a really perverse defense mechanism. It's rooted in this deep dissatisfaction and a feeling of perpetual emptiness. They are essentially punishing their partner for failing to meet an ever-growing, psychologically distorted need that often they can't even articulate clearly themselves.
And that cruelty serves two immediate, if destructive, functions. First, it expresses their profound, intolerable emotional discomfort. It's a scream of pain.
And second,
More subtly, it preemptively rejects the partner before the partner can fail them again. By lashing out, they create distance. They're managing their chronic disappointment by ensuring the source of that potential fulfillment is kept at arm's length.
wow, so this sounds like a relationship dynamic that just spirals into collapse. It has to.
It almost always does if it's not interrupted.
The needy person becomes harshly critical. The giving partner, who is only human, inevitably pulls back because of the cruelty,
Which in turn exacerbates the original need of the first partner.
which leads to even more harshness.
It is the definition of a vicious cycle. It often results in complete emotional exhaustion and burnout for both people involved.
And the source material synthesis on this point.
It's crystal clear. Enduring this specific inverse scenario, the high need, low fulfillment dynamic, the love blindness trap, has a significant negative emotional impact on the individual who is afflicted by the need. They become a source of pain for the relationship because their internal state has overwhelmed their ability to perceive and respond lovingly to their external environment. They are emotionally miserable, and that misery is systematically projected as cruelty.
It is the tragedy of being emotionally unable to accept the nourishment being offered, because the sheer size of your hunger has grown so large that every portion looks like a mockery.
Well said.
This explains why people who feel so desperately unloved often drive away the very people who are trying the hardest to connect with them. They are suffering from a chronic famine, and their coping mechanism is to bite the hand that's trying to feed them.
And for anyone listening who might be stuck in this dynamic, the question to ask yourself is, am I punishing my partner for not being telepathic? Because the need is so overwhelming, they expect their partner to instinctively know and fill it, and when they inevitably fail, the cruelty just erupts.
We've covered the pathology of scarcity, the love blindness born of that emotional famine. Now we have to move to the second, often more subtle and maybe more insidious inverse relationship.
This one is tricky.
It is. This requires careful analysis because it flips the entire dynamic. We're moving from the heat of desperation to the absolute chill of detachment.
This is the scenario of emotional saturation, or maybe even profound emotional disinterest that's masking itself as satisfaction. This second inverse relationship is defined as the emotional coldness dynamic.
Okay.
It's a decreased need for love combined with an increase in, or crucially, the pretense of fulfillment of love.
So just to be clear, we have a partner who doesn't actually require much affection, attention, or input. Maybe their internal emotional battery is just full, or they're simply not prioritizing the relationship.
Right.
But they're acting as if they are deeply satisfied, or at least they're accepting the partner's efforts without any pushback.
Precisely. The supply, or at least the performance of receiving the supply is high, but the internal demand is low. The partner operating from this position is often emotionally checked out.
Where are they getting their fulfillment?
They might be finding it elsewhere, in work, in hobbies, in another person, or simply experiencing a kind of psychological decoupling from the relationship's core purpose. Yet they maintain the facade to keep the peace.
I want to challenge that term low need for a second. Is it a low need for love in general, or a low need for this specific partner's love? Because if the need is genuinely low, why the pretense? Why not just say, hey, I'm good right now?
That's a crucial distinction and a great question. It could be either, but the pretense is what signals a relational failure. They are pretending to be fulfilled either to avoid conflict,
Which is very common.
very common, or to maintain stability for external reasons, like for the kids or for financial security. Or maybe because they lack the emotional courage to admit, I don't need or want what you are offering me right now.
And that's a hard thing to say to someone you supposedly love.
It's devastating. So by pretending to be satisfied, they send a false signal, everything is fine, I'm full. Internally, however, they feel nothing. Their emotional receptors are just turned down low. And this denial of authentic feeling, this maintenance of the lie, it leads directly to the core consequence, emotional coldness.
Emotional coldness. It really is the opposite of the frantic heat of scenario one, isn't it?
Completely.
It's the chilling emptiness of someone who is physically present but entirely detached.
Right.
It's the partner who is theoretically there but offers no emotional depth or resonance.
And just like the first scenario, the source material specifies that this dynamic also results in harshness cruelty in dealing with the partner. But this time, it's coming from the party who is pretending to be fulfilled, the emotionally cold party.
This is a critical point that we have to expand on.
Yeah.
Both inverse relationships result in this kwaswa, this cruelty, but the source is fundamentally different. In scenario one, you said the cruelty was born of pain and emotional starvation. What fuels the cruelty here in scenario two?
The cruelty in scenario 2 is born of impatience. It's born of irritation and sheer resentment related to maintaining the facade and having to engage.
This performance fatigue.
Performance fatigue, that's perfect. If my internal need for love is low, maybe I only need 10 units. And yet you, my partner, keep offering me 100 units of affection, demanding emotional conversations, or insisting I celebrate the supposed deep fulfillment we have. I become annoyed.
It's too much.
It's too much. I'm being forced to perform a role that is exhausting and, from my perspective, completely unnecessary for my low internal demand.
So the partner's loving actions, their bids for connection, they become an imposition. They become pressure or just noise.
Exactly. The low-need partner is constantly expending energy to appear satisfied and engaged when they are truly indifferent or detached. They might snap at their partner for being too much or dismiss their emotional bids because they resent the effort required to keep the performance going.
So the cruelty here, it stems from profound emotional distance and a lack of empathy.
Yes. The absence of genuine desire manifests as coldness, and that coldness is expressed as harsh treatment when the partner pushes for warmth that isn't there. The pretense eventually breaks down into visible impatience and irritation.
What are the telltale behaviors of this kind of detachment-born cruelty? How does it show up?
It often manifests as passive non-participation, dismissiveness, or what some people call weaponized incompetence. They do the bare minimum to maintain the structure of the relationship, but they withdraw all the emotional investment. So examples would be avoiding difficult conversations by just saying, I'm fine, everything's fine, always being slightly unavailable, or acting annoyed when their partner expresses
The
vulnerability.
sigh, the eye roll.
The heavy sigh is a classic. If the partner asks, are you okay? Do you still love me? The cold partner's reply isn't reassurance. It's often an impatient, yes, of course, why do you keep asking, can we just drop this? The cruelty is in that subtle, sustained rejection of emotional intimacy.
That's a powerful distinction. One cruelty is a panicked, hot reaction to feeling empty. The other is a weary, cold reaction to feeling crowded.
And that synthesis is essential. Both inverse relationships, whether they're born of overwhelming unmet need, which is love blindness, or deep emotional disengagement, which is emotional coldness, have a significant negative emotional impact on the human experiencing the relationship.
They define environments that are inherently unstable.
And they cause acute emotional harm precisely because the demand and supply curves are moving in opposite destructive directions.
The sources, then, they force us to diagnose why the variables are fighting each other. Are you dealing with a partner whose internal pain is so great they cannot perceive the good you're offering?
Right.
That's scenario one.
Or are you dealing with a partner whose internal requirement for connection is so low that they resent the energy required to meet your needs? That's scenario two. The treatment plan, and frankly, the prognosis for the relationship, depend entirely on which inverse scenario you are living in.
So if a listener suspects they might be in scenario two,
A good question to ask is this. Does your partner seem visibly relieved when you stop asking them for engagement? Or when you stop asking them about their day? That relief is often the clearest indicator that they are maintaining a facade of fulfillment that they desperately want to drop.
the insight here is just crushing. In scenario one, the partner feels invisible because their needs aren't being met. In scenario two, the partner feels rejected because their efforts aren't even needed.
Both outcomes are absolutely devastating.
So, wow, what does this all mean? Let's try to rapidly review the 4 key emotional states defined by this source material, because this framework, it really does provide a profound but simple diagnostic tool.
It does. We've established 4 clear dynamic types based on how the need for love and the fulfillment of love interact with each other.
Okay, so first, the healthy one, the direct relationship. When need and fulfillment synchronize and they move together, increasing or decreasing, and it's driven by that positive, anticipated longing.
This leads to emotional balance. This dynamic is stable, it's fluid, and it's self-reinforcing. It's the goal.
Right. Then we have the first negative one, the love-starvation dynamic.
High need, low fulfillment. This results in love blindness and ultimately that hot cruelty from the needy, unfulfilled partner. This is a pathology driven by the painful scream of emotional scarcity.
And third, the other side of that coin, the emotional coldness dynamic.
Low need, feigned fulfillment. This results in emotional coldness and ultimately that cold, impatient cruelty from the detached, pretending partner. This is a pathology driven by resentment, by impatience, and the exhaustion of emotional deception.
The source material, then, provides us with this incredibly clear diagnostic lens for relational health.
It really does. Relationships are defined not merely by how much love is given in some objective sense, but by how the need and the fulfillment are actively interacting.
Are they moving together, fostering synchronization and balance?
Or are they fighting each other, leading to that negative emotional impact and those very specific forms of cruelty?
The fact that both inverse relationships result in quaswa cruelty is incredibly striking to me. It really underlines the idea that emotional imbalance doesn't just result in sadness or, drifting apart.
No, it's more active than that.
It is. It results in a very specific active emotional harm being deployed, sometimes completely unconsciously.
Let's use a powerful, memorable analogy to distinguish the two cruelties, because the source material makes this distinction vital. Cruelty in scenario one is like a starving person lashing out. They seize a small plate of food and they throw it across the room because it's too little, it's too late, and the frustration is just overwhelming.
It's destructive, born of pain.
Exactly.
And cruelty in scenario two.
That cruelty is like a homeowner swatting a fly.
Oh, wow.
It's a casual, impatient reaction to something annoying that is distracting them from their comfort or their detachment. It is cold, born of indifference and resentment toward the partner's insistent presence or their request for connection.
This framework, it forces us to confront the fact that while giving love is important, aligning your giving with your partner's authentic need is absolutely paramount.
Without that alignment, without that synchronization, the love you give is often just wasted.
Right.
Or worse.
Worse, it becomes a catalyst for the specific type of pain and cruelty that defines these inverse relationships.
Which suggests that a functional relationship requires ongoing, brutally honest calibration of emotional demand and supply.
And that calibration is the true continuous work of a relationship.
It is, and if we look back at the one healthy state, that direct relationship, it requires both need and fulfillment to increase together, and it's bound by that mutual longing. This implies something crucial.
What is that?
A truly healthy relationship must actively embrace, rather than suppress, the expression of need.
The vulnerability.
Exactly. If needing is the precursor to longing, and longing is the engine of synchronization, then vulnerability is not a weakness in the system, it's a structural requirement for balance.
If we suppress our need, we cut off the potential for shared longing and that crucial positive correlation with fulfillment.
We starve the onion of its fuel. We force the system into an unsustainable state, one of these two negative loops.
So the final provocative thought for you, the listener, to mull over is this. Is acknowledging and expressing your deepest, most authentic needs is the only reliable path to achieving that positive correlation with fulfillment. Does this imply that vulnerability is not just beneficial, but fundamentally essential to maintain the structural health of any loving connection?
Is the fear of showing genuine need the very thing that pushes us toward the destructive loops of coldness or blindness in the first place?
That's the question to carry forward, knowing that the health of your relational engine really does depend on the answer.
A lot to think about.
A lot to think about. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the paradox of need and fulfillment. We hope these insights offer a new, more precise lens through which to view your own emotional connections.
And we look forward to diving deep with you again soon.